It was a bright, cold morning when Karoline Leavitt entered the Fox News studio. As she walked across the polished floors, her heels clicking softly, she adjusted the straps of her bag, her mind focused on the debate ahead. Known for her sharp intellect and her no-nonsense approach to media, Karoline had made a name for herself in the world of political analysis. Today, she was set to clash with none other than Robert De Niro, a seasoned pundit who was a staple in conservative media circles. Their ideological differences had long been a source of tension in the political landscape, and today would be no different. Karoline's nerves were steady, a calculated calm that had been honed over years of public speaking and debating. She had researched her talking points thoroughly, prepared for every counter-argument, every tactic Robert might use to throw her off balance. It wasn't just about winning this debate. It was about sending a message about truth, accountability, and the power of standing up for what's right in a media landscape that was often more interested in ratings than the facts. Meanwhile, Robert De Niro was already in his seat, his posture rigid, his face a mask of authority. A man used to being in control, Robert was never one to shy away from an argument. His fan base adored him for his unapologetic stance on conservative issues, and he had built his career on challenging anyone who dared to oppose him. Today, however, Karoline was no ordinary opponent. As the camera crew readied their equipment and the producers called for a quick sound check, Karoline took a seat at her designated spot across from Robert. She could feel the tension in the air, thick and palpable. This wasn't just any ordinary segment. This was a high-stakes confrontation that would likely have far-reaching consequences. "Karoline," Robert greeted her, his tone polite but clipped. "I hope you're ready for a real debate today." Karoline offered a tight-lipped smile. "I'm always ready, Robert." The studio lights brightened, the cameras rolled, and the live broadcast began. "Good evening, everyone," the host announced. "Welcome to tonight's special edition of Political Showdown. Tonight's guests are Karoline Leavitt, political analyst, and Robert De Niro, conservative commentator. Let's dive right in." The host asked a question about the current state of American politics, and Karoline began her argument calmly, citing recent developments and statistical data. Her voice was steady, her words measured. However, Robert was quick to interrupt, his usual bravado on full display. "With all due respect, Karoline, your arguments sound nice, but they don't hold up in the real world. You're too caught up in numbers and theory. What we need is action, not more talk." Karoline's eyes narrowed slightly. She had expected this. Robert's tactic was to belittle his opponents, to challenge them with blunt force rather than facts. But Karoline wasn't intimidated. "The problem with that, Robert," she replied, "is that action without understanding only leads to chaos. We've seen that before, haven't we?" Robert scoffed, leaning forward. "Understanding? What's the point of understanding when the country is falling apart? We need to make bold moves, not sit around analyzing data that doesn't change anything." Karoline's voice remained calm, but there was an edge to it now. "Bold moves that ignore reality? That's what got us into this mess in the first place." The studio air grew thicker as the debate continued. Each word exchanged between Karoline and Robert felt like a calculated strike, and the tension in the room was palpable. "You're idealistic, Karoline," Robert retorted, his voice rising. "You think facts and numbers will fix everything. But the reality is, people are suffering out there, and they don't care about your data. They want change. They want action." Karoline took a deep breath, her fingers subtly gripping the edge of the desk in front of her. She had been preparing for this moment, knowing Robert would try to discredit her points with emotional appeals and vague promises. But she had something more powerful: the truth. "The people are suffering, yes," she responded, her voice unwavering. "But action without a solid foundation is reckless. We need thoughtful solutions, not impulsive decisions driven by fear and outrage." Robert's face darkened, his smile now gone. He leaned in, his eyes locking with Karoline's. "You talk about thoughtful solutions. but all I see is delay and indecision. People don't want thoughtful solutions. They want results. And if you're not willing to deliver those results, then maybe you're part of the problem. The host tried to interject, sensing the conversation was veering into dangerous territory. "Let's stick to the facts, gentlemen." But Robert cut him off. "No, we need to address this. Karoline wants to sit on the sidelines while the country burns. She wants to debate and analyze, but we need action. Now." Karoline stood her ground, her eyes never leaving Robert's. "And that's exactly the problem, Robert. You're so desperate for action that you'll sacrifice reason for it. That's not leadership. That's chaos." The studio was silent for a moment, the weight of Karoline's words hanging in the air. Robert's face was a mix of frustration and anger. He had underestimated her, and now he was feeling the sting of her precision. "You're naive," he spat, his voice dripping with disdain. "You can't keep hiding behind your precious data while the world falls apart around you." Karoline's expression softened, but only slightly. "I'm not hiding behind data, Robert. I'm standing behind the truth. And the truth is, we need more than just knee-jerk reactions. We need careful, strategic solutions to address the issues facing this country." Robert's eyes flashed with something darker now, his patience running thin. "And that's where you're wrong. The time for strategy is over. We need action. And if you're too afraid to make the tough decisions, then you're not part of the solution. You're part of the problem." The host quickly moved to cut in again, but before he could speak, the live broadcast abruptly cut to a commercial break. The tension in the studio was thick, and outside the viewers were already starting to react. Social media erupted in real time, with clips of the fiery exchange between Karoline and Robert flooding timelines. Some praised Karoline's calm and calculated responses, while others took Robert's side, arguing that he was the only one brave enough to speak the truth. Back in the studio, Karoline leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. The debate wasn't over, but she knew one thing for sure. She had made her point, and the storm that was about to hit wouldn't be easy to weather. The moment the debate ended, the social media storm began. Karoline's calm, reasoned responses were hailed by some as a victory of intellect, while Robert's passionate, aggressive demeanor was praised by his supporters as proof that he was the voice of the people. The hashtags, Karoline Leavitt wins and Robert De Niro tells the truth, trended in real time, and the commentary poured in faster than anyone could process. Media outlets from both sides of the political spectrum were covering the debate, dissecting every word, every gesture, trying to spin the conversation in their favor. Some commentators speculated that Karoline had come off as too idealistic, while others accused Robert of being too incendiary and not offering real solutions. But it wasn't just the media that was paying attention. Viewers were taking to their own social platforms, sharing clips, writing posts, and making videos analyzing every detail. The debate had sparked a massive divide, and everyone had an opinion. In the days that followed, Karoline found herself at the center of a media whirlwind. While some praised her for staying composed under pressure, others questioned whether her approach was too intellectual and disconnected from the real-world struggles of everyday Americans. Her inbox was flooded with messages from supporters and critics alike. Some wanted to know more about her positions on key issues, others just wanted to argue. But Karoline wasn't fazed. She had faced media scrutiny before, and she knew how to navigate the chaos. Robert, on the other hand, was loving every moment of the attention. His social media following had surged, and he was reveling in the validation from his supporters. To him, the debate had been a victory, not just in the studio, but in the court of public opinion. As Karoline sat in her apartment one evening, scrolling through her phone, she received a message that would change everything. It was a request for an interview. But this wasn't just any interview. It was from a high-profile news network that had never reached out to her before. They wanted to know if she would be willing to discuss the debate in depth. For Karoline, this was an opportunity to control the narrative, to show that there was more to her than the calm, composed woman who had taken on Robert De Niro. There was a fire inside her, and now the world was starting to see it. Karoline's decision to accept the interview marked the beginning of a new phase in her political career. The media storm that had followed her debate with Robert De Niro showed no signs of slowing down. In fact, it was only growing stronger. The interview was scheduled for the following week, and it was clear that both Karoline and Robert were preparing for round 2. Behind the scenes, Karoline spent hours with her team, preparing for the interview. This wasn't just about answering questions. It was about framing the narrative in a way that showcased her strength, her intellect, and her commitment to real change. The night before the interview, Karoline stood in front of the mirror, running through her talking points one last time. She was calm, but there was a fire in her eyes now. She was no longer just the intellectual. She was a force to be reckoned with. When the interview aired, it was a masterclass in political discourse. Karoline responded to every question with precision, her words calculated and measured. She didn't just defend her positions, she attacked the very premise of Robert's arguments. The media world was watching, and for the first time, Karoline Leavitt had the upper hand. But Robert wasn't done yet. He watched the interview with growing frustration, knowing that Karoline had outmaneuvered him on his own turf. He was a skilled debater, but Karoline had shown that intelligence and calm could outshine aggression and noise. The showdown wasn't over. It was just beginning. As the public debate raged on, the stakes were higher than ever. What started as a simple political disagreement had escalated into a full-blown media war, and the question on everyone's mind was, who would come out on top?